The one thing that I do appreciate about my critics and detractors is when they're willing to come on and have a discussion with me on live. Not everybody's willing to do that. So I actually invited him on the show. His name is Zach Costello.
Well, I guess my question to you would be are you questioning her conversion, or are you questioning her detriment, I would say, to Christianity, or do you feel as though she's trying to con Christians into believing that she's a convert for money? Because it seems like that was more so your take with regard
Yes,
to Nala
yes,
Ray.
I think she is a con. And the reason I think
Like totally con. So you don't believe that this girl stopped doing OnlyFans because she found Christ. And this is where I disagreed with you. I said you have a hopeless message with regard to Nala Ray. And that's basically what I'm defending here, in that I believe that if somebody wants to turn their life around and turn away from sin, I guess you can say, if we're going to speak in religious language, that is a good thing. Now, how she went about doing it publicly, now turning into, what you would call a Protestant pastor, that is where I would say, okay, like, don't agree with everything that she's saying there. But like I said, and I think a tweet that I responded to of yours, like, I think we can all agree that Nala not being an OnlyFans model, I'll use appropriate language here,
a hooker
and being a confused Christian
like a hooker
is better for her, right? It's better for her. It's better for society. I think we can all agree. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, but the problem is I've seen this film before, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing when we have an OnlyFans model to preacher pipeline, and I'm not allowed to call out inconsistencies in her stories. So one thing that she claimed was that she was baptized and she had a change of heart in December. She had 5 months to delete her OnlyFans. 5. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. She doesn't delete it until the day before the Michael Knowles interview. In that time period, her prices were raised. She has active chats going on where she's communicating with men and still sending nudes. So, she can say one thing, but if I look at her actions, I think if you're claiming I had a change of heart in December and this isn't about money, then you wouldn't make it about money. You wouldn't start a Jesus Christ brand, right? You wouldn't start selling Jesus sweatshirts. And I think that's the challenge, where I just think that people blindly believing her without verifying anything are just foolish. And then they come at me when I'm right.
What is there to gain for you for her failing to change her life and turn her life around?
Well, I think that the truth is important regardless of how it makes people feel. So you might feel icky. I mean, it's a really great story, right? That's a really great movie. Porn star becomes a pastor, really changes her life. We all want that to be true. But if the facts don't line up with what she's saying, and, magically when she's getting the Christian clout, that's when she's magically deciding to delete it. If we look at the incentives, I'm not going to stop saying it just because it ruins people's story.
True. And I think we should stand for the truth. I totally agree with that. Now, here's my thing that, and when it comes down to it, like, I don't think that Nala should necessarily be a Christian influencer, even though it seems like she's trying to be. I certainly don't think that she gets to be a pastor, but I agree with Andrew Wilson in that what Nala has turned into is he calls it buffet Christianity, where she can pick and choose the things that she likes. And that is not the case for a number of denominations, like even good Protestant, obviously good Protestant ones, Catholic, Orthodox, etc. Like, we believe Christianity to be objective. We are subject to the interpretation that we've been given by the authority of the church, for example.
Right, but
we don't get to go in and interpret our own scripture. So I think this is the problem when it comes to Christian OnlyFans models, basically justifying what they're doing. Jesus agrees with what I'm doing. Like, that's not the way that it works.
But you become part of the problem when you're white knighting for her. And like you make videos condemning me for saying what I said, which was true. And you don't make any video condemning her now. Like, where's the video now where you say, hey, you shouldn't be preaching. Hey, that's incorrect. Maybe I missed it. I'm not saying I saw it all, but it's like, that's what I get from Christians. They're mad at me for my tone and me for pointing it out, but they're not mad at her for being disrespectful to Andrew. And spreading things that are not true.
Yeah, I'll grant to you that her current behavior, her current theology, I do not agree with. I haven't gotten into it
Mm.
online.
What's more important, actions or words?
Well, I mean, yes, actions are more important.
Okay, so other than deleting the OnlyFans after she got Christianity clout, so I'm not even going to give that as a bonus because she just traded. We all know if you look at the demographics, white Christian men are OnlyFans customers. That's the number one. You could talk to any OnlyFans model, married Christian men. That's who's buying OnlyFans. So all she did was substitute in her old fans for new Christian fans that are just going to follow her. And if she ever goes back into it, it's still a backup, right? So other than the deleting the OnlyFans, what did she do?
So, I mean, is she doing OnlyFans currently?
No, but she's an influencer. So she's a Chris. She just traded in the one clout for the other. That's it. I mean, like if she was sitting in the back of the church, quiet, reading her Bible, no one would have any problem. But it's that it's becoming a OnlyFans to Christian pipeline.
Do you think that there's any value in women who were previously doing OnlyFans coming out and talking about how terrible the lifestyle is and turning their lives around? Do you think there's any value to that?
Not really. I'd rather hear from the women that didn't do it and lived virtuous lives. I think that when you have ex-hoes going around saying, hey, you can do whatever you want and still get married after, you're basically telling younger women, you can literally do OnlyFans and a man will marry you after.
So you think they're incentivizing that behavior and then they have basically an off-ramp later on?
Yeah. Then I didn't know. I was coerced, whatever. I was so broken. Yeah. And the thing is, because I've actually interviewed, you've seen my show. So I've interviewed these women, and when they're doing it, it's not because they're coerced. It's not because they don't know what they're doing. They love being naked on camera. And a lot of these women have a huge addiction to attention. So do I believe overnight that a woman with such an addiction to attention that she got tag teamed on camera by two men at the same time, that in 5 months she's magically better and now can be preaching the gospel? No, I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like when it comes to Catholic marriage prep and a lot of the Catholic education, I mean, I'll say this, and I've been outspoken about this on my channel. I mean, a lot of it is feminist influence. I think like 90% or so of Catholic education and pre-education comes from women. I mean, there's certainly a male leadership problem within the Catholic Church. I mean, you've used terms like I think it's sympedemic.
Yeah, it's a sympedemic.
Is what you've said. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and deny that the Catholic Church has not been influenced by feminism. I mean, I think I think you see that. I think that's obvious.
So if you're agreeing that the Catholic Church has been influenced by feminism, how can you still push Catholic marriage and say that feminism won't influence it? Because that's like the next point we're going to go through.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we can get into marriage when it comes down to it, and this is a hill I'm willing to die on. I believe that the Catholic vision of marriage is ideal for men and women.
So I don't like to stick with ideals because it just becomes a wish list of what we wish would be true, right? So
yeah, but there's examples of people actually executing this in reality.
Right. I'm talking about the women today that men have to pick from as wives are not generally practicing Catholics.
There are plenty of statistics on, and I know you know this,
Mm-hmm.
on men and women who attend church weekly every Sunday.
Right.
Men and women who pray together. And I know we can get on that. I know you've pushed back on that
Mm-hmm.
many times. Those individuals are less likely to cohabitate before marriage. They're more likely to have low body counts, I guess you can say. And the stats say that those individuals are more likely to have marriage success. But, I wouldn't say that is limited necessarily to just Catholic. I think you can look at other religious denominations and, as long as those habits are being executed, then you're likely to have more marriage success. You have to acknowledge that the percentages are significantly lower compared to the rest of the population. Like, and if you take the rest of the secular population,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it happens significantly more than it does in a conservative Catholic community.
You're ignoring what I'm saying, though, because the problem with the stats you're talking about is they're only taking the people that are still practicing. And the challenge you get is some people start off practicing together. The wife says, I'm going to leave. He can't do anything. And so now he's not taken into that statistic because like now they're not praying every day and going to church, even though they started that way. It's like conveniently taking the winners. So it's not a good sample size. But if you take the number of divorces, and I don't know this I can't remember it off the top of my head, but Catholic, it's similar. It's because the problem is they have to convince men to get married. They have to. And the reason they have to is because men, if they don't keep convincing men to sign up, the government doesn't know what they're going to do with all of these single women. So that's why they're pushing it, because they don't want to see homeless single women. They want men to do the hard jobs. They want men to keep paying alimony, keep paying child support, because a part of child support is in Social Security. I'm kind of butchering it, but that's the reason why. So a lot of times with these places that are like pushing marriage, they're just conveniently taking the winners.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not without its problems, especially in the society that we live in. But I would ask you this, Pearl, like, do you agree that marriage is important for a functioning society?
Sure, when you practice it biblically, sure. But today's society, they're paid to leave. So you can't have a traditional marriage when women are paid to leave. You can't, because women will always have the upper hand. And so I just wonder how people can so confidently like push something when there's no guarantee and you don't know for sure it'll work out. And the other thing is too, when I'm showing you these risks of these guys like getting their kids stolen, getting their kid transitioned, all of these, being like, if a guy's between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, they take more than 50% of his income for 18 years. That's slavery. That's like, there are absolutely men that are in worse places today, and some even suicidal because they got married. So do you think that if you push a guy to do it and he ends up in that position, that you are at all responsible?
I mean, that's impossible to answer. I I would say so if a guy gets married, if a man and woman get married, and maybe you're talking about, obviously these are real. These really do happen. I'm not denying that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, these are worst case scenario type of situations.
The challenge is it gives you a worse chance if you're the one providing in terms of divorce court. So you're punished if you do the patriarchal thing and pay all the bills. You're actually punished for it in court, and your child support payment. Like I just interviewed a guy in, I think it was Idaho, and he supported his wife, had 5 kids for 20 years, and she divorced him. And he now has to delay his retirement by 12 years. He's in his 50s, 60s, around there. So I think I calculated it out. He'd be 69 when he could actually retire. Was that worth it? She alienated the kids from him. Now his kids don't like him. So I actually wanted to see, are you interested in learning more about this?
Sure. I came on your show not to necessarily, butt heads with you, but again, I said to you that there are aspects of your message that I don't disagree with. But there are certainly aspects of it that I do, and I'd be interested in learning more.
Where shall I begin? And let me tell you something here. All right, I hear what you're saying about the whole Christianity, choose the perfect woman, what have you. But unfortunately, the world we live in, marriage is managed by the state, not by the religious institutions. So it doesn't really matter what you have to say, Zach. The reality on the ground is simply this: 80% of divorces are filed by women. 85% of the time, no matter what, the mother is going to get custody of those children. A lion's share of all alimony and child support is paid by men. If men don't pay such child support and it gets over a certain dollar amount, you can get charged with a felony and put in big boy pound you in the ass jail. Even if you do pay your child support, you still have to work either a second job or overtime just to make those financial obligations, which means you don't have really that kind of time to spend with your child. So you're watching them grow up and fast forward, which I'm telling you through experience is literally every time I drop my kids off to their mothers, it was like processing a death. It's psychologically destroying. And I have been dealing with the aftermath of these individuals. Like, you're up there, you're in church, you're doing your own thing. I got it. I'm at the bottom of the pyramid catching these broken dudes and doing the best I can to slap them back together and get them back out into the fight using logic, reason, and comedy. All right. Now, I was raised as a Christian. My denomination is Catholic Light, which is Episcopalian, but it happens in the Western world, in all denominations, all religions, Buddhists, Muslims, Jewish, of all different sects, they all go through this divorce thing. And what Pearl said is absolutely true. Women are rewarded for breaking the marriage contract hand over fist. All right.
Yes.
Now, I'm not attacking you at all, Zach. I respect what you do. I got it. And, I wish we lived in a different world where people could get married and stay married. Well, there are studies out there that once a woman goes over 5 sexual partners, her chances of staying in a long-term committed relationship drop into the 20 percentile. It is just an ugly situation all the way around.
I understand that, and I'm not denying that there aren't risks when it comes to marriage, and I also am not naive to the fact that there are individuals that have certainly suffered at the hands of failed marriages, and I acknowledge that there are laws in place that significantly favor women over men. And I think reform is needed in that regard. This is the question that I would pose to you guys. Like, what then is the solution from a societal and individual standpoint?
My solution,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead,
say
Nick.
something?
Go ahead. Yeah.
My solution is there's something called a modern marriage strike. Don't get involved in modern marriage. You say, well, I'm for traditional marriage. No, you are in a modern marriage, whether you like it or not. The state will ruin your life if they come after you. You're asking men to play Russian roulette with their posterity. I was an Orthodox Presbyterian pastor, and I got totally wrecked and zeroed out.
Yep.
I fought for the patriarchy. I believe in traditional marriage, but traditional marriage does not currently exist in the United States because the state controls it.
Absolutely correct. All right. Here's my my retort here. You're talking about where men are hardwired to get married and reproduce. You're absolutely correct. But you also have to take into account just how far the modern women has fallen in value, where men don't want to do that anymore. They're not dating. They're not pursuing women, in large quantities. We've got nightclubs, bars going out of business. We have the wedding industry has gone bankrupt, 2 or 3 times now. Men build, maintain, and protect the civilization. And what we have going on here is our civilization has broken the contract between men and women. So men no longer have an incentive to participate. And I encourage every one of the men I talk to ask a simple question: what is in it for me? And if that question is not answered, do not participate, because we have a civilization where I would say billions of people before us, going back, a millennia, where men have sacrificed their health, their well-being, their very lives, and I would even dare say their immortal souls for the vicious shit you got to do in war. All right. And they went into this willingly, knowing that there's a contract, like, hey, I can have the wife, the kid, the white picket fence, what have you. That's gone now. So this is what's going to happen. We are going to see, in some form or fashion, a collapse of the Western world. And it's going to turn, historically, when you look at that, it's going to be incredibly vicious, bloody, vile. I don't want to see it happen. But if, I'm a realist and I look at the examples of history, and that is exactly where we're going.
Fair enough. And I'm an optimist, and that's why I am currently out here fighting for traditional marriages, which will prevent us from collapsing as a society and as a civilization.
Listen,
I don't
God
know.
bless you, man. You got a heart of gold. I'll give you that, man. I really do. So
it's a hill that I'm willing to die on, because again,
yeah,
because I think it's the most important thing. And you guys, if you were listening before, you heard me say that I understand that there are risks. I understand, big risks. I used the business example before when I was criticizing Pearl about marriage, but
You're not enslaved to your business for 18 years, though. Like, my parents had a business, and if it failed, they failed, but they're not stuck.
You can certainly go bankrupt. You can certainly get into severe financial debt from business decisions. You absolutely can. People commit suicide because their business fails. Like, all of those are examples, but that would never be a reason to not pursue it?
I would say that it would certainly be a reason to not pursue it if your business partner was incentivized to rip you off. That would be the equivalent of going into business when your partner is paid to rip you off. No one would do it.
Yeah. And also, like our entire civilization, the laws and the traditions are skewed to favor the woman in virtually every respect. For instance, you're living with a woman, she dials 911, makes a claim you did some crazy stuff, you're going to jail. And it's going to cost you between 5 and 20K to get out of that, depending upon if you take a plea or fight it in court. We've seen the Me Too, where people's careers have been absolutely destroyed by women who made accusations that are decades old. All right. I myself, in the military, if I did not have a nanny cam in my office recording a specific interaction I had with an female officer, I would have been kicked out of the military and probably living in the street now. And you're talking about risks. I got you. But there's a big difference between a business risk and a marriage risk. You can lose your business and do a bankruptcy. They're not going to throw you in prison. Maybe they'll give you a payment plan. Got it. And maybe that'll take longer. But in the real world, where women are favored by the laws in criminal court, civil court, and divorce court, and you can literally wind up in prison under false accusations. I've had judges, I've talked to guys who've had judges impose incredibly high child support numbers based on the degree that the individual held, meaning he didn't even have that job. He had the education for said job, so they randomly just picked a number and said this is what he had to pay. And he wound up doing 18 months in the Michigan Correctional Facility for felony child support evasion. And he wasn't evading, he just couldn't pay it. On average, if you lose your job, you get cancer, you get injured, it's going to take you 5 appearances before the judge before they'll even entertain lowering your child support. And that could take anywhere from 5 months to a year and a half, sometimes 2 years. A lot of money can get racked up in 2 years. Most states, $5,000. Anything over that is felony child support evasion. So you're trying to get your numbers corrected, but the court took forever to do it or didn't listen to you the first 4 times. And then all of a sudden you're standing in front of the judge. You owe more than $5,000, and he could quite literally just pound the gavel, and you're going to prison. And that's not even talking about the whole suicide numbers. I would estimate from my research and my studies and talking to all these individuals that 60 to 70% of the time, the suicides that I've heard about or had to deal with or heard through secondhand had either a divorce or a contact with family court within 5 years of their suicide date. All right. And there's a reason why 65 to 70% of the men out there are homeless. A lot of those guys will never get out of the street because they owe a huge amount of child support. And in most states, the interest rate on unpaid child support is sitting between 9 and 15%. That's usury. The state's getting away with it. And if these men decide, hey, I want to fix my life and get a job, the first paycheck they get, it's going to be docked almost 85, 90%. And a lot of these guys are like, screw it. I'm just going to live on the street, turn myself in for child support evasion, in the fall, spend the entire winter in jail, get out in the spring or whenever. And they just live in this pool of helplessness. And it is evil beyond compare. And I understand you want to save everything, but sacrificing men in your church to save the civilization is not the answer. There's a reason why most of the congregations out there are mostly women, because the minute a man shows up there, they want to pawn off these swamp donkeys, which are these women with multiple kids or multiple divorces on these guys coming in. And it's a bunch of bullshit.
So Nick, you were a pastor, right?
Yeah, I was a pastor.
What was like your experience? I know you ended up getting divorced after you had 7 kids?
Yeah, she had been constructing a narrative where I was, quote unquote, abusive, verbal, emotional, sexual, physical, you name it. Even like my facial hair apparently was abusive. I literally have that text message. She tried to beat me and I ran to the church like I usually did. She had a history of beating me, called the police, had lasers on my chest, threw my ass in jail, couldn't see my kids for 8 months, lost custody of my kids because of my religious beliefs, because of my patriarchal religious beliefs. I fought for that in the church. I still do. And I believe it. These religious women, especially if they're traditional, they have all the more incentive to try to screw you over, excuse my language, or F you, or whatever you want to call it, to morally justify their shameful behavior. So they will increase the charges to justify leaving you. They could be false charges because they can't deal with the shame factor of the sisterhood of the church ladies. Versus if you had a woman that wasn't even a Christian, it might not even be as bad. You see your kids develop, but you have no real say on what's going on in their life. You see the lack of structure. You see the lack of discipline. You feel the pain when you drop them off that their lives are probably screwed and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
I think there's this idea that it's not common, right? That it's like a 1% chance, like that it won't happen to you. Because you are like an expert with the different stats. So I was wondering if you could kind of go through them.
I'll run you through it. 80% of the divorces are filed by women, and that even goes up to 90% if you add in college-educated women. And furthermore, if a woman is working and she makes close to what you make, your chances of getting divorced go up quite a bit. Okay, now, of the 85-15, 85% of the time, these women will get custody of the children no matter what. I've seen women get custody. They're convicted felons, in drug rehab, working, as sex workers. Okay, of the 15% where the man actually gets the custody of those kids, 5 to 7% of the time, the mother didn't show up in court and he won by default. So the true number is somewhere between 93 and 97% of the time, or 95% of the time, the children are going to the mother. And if you look at the stats of, the end result of children of fatherless homes, 85% of the felons in court or in prison are there because they came from a single mother home. The rapists overwhelmingly come from single mother homes, drug addicts, and then you have your mental instability. All of those go up through the roof when they come from a single mother home. And while you're going through your divorce, the entire court will look you in the face and say, we're doing this for the best interest of the child. And in reality, it's all financially motivated. If you haven't heard of Title 4D money, that is basically where the federal government reimburses the counties for collecting child support from these fathers, and they're reimbursed from the Social Security Fund anywhere between 35 cents to $1.50 per dollar collected, depending upon the different aspects of the situation. So when we run out of Social Security money, all of that could be blamed solely on the feet of the single mother.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding why you can't practice a traditional marriage and abide by, for example, what the church teaches and treat marriage as a sacrament and structure marriage
Can you
as
control
a traditional marriage despite what the current marriage laws are.
Can you control another person?
Of course not. But even if the laws were totally in favor of traditional marriage, I still couldn't control another person.
Okay, so if your wife tomorrow said, I want to leave, what leverage do you have to make her not? How could you stop her?
I have no leverage to control anybody in that regard.
Well, that's why you don't have a traditional marriage, because if tomorrow she says, I want to leave and steal your children, she can. So she automatically has the leverage. And if she goes to court, there is a 90% chance she gets primary custody, meaning you'll never make another primary decision. She gets to pick where they go to school. She gets to pick who's around your kids. You get every other weekend. So you can't have a traditional marriage because she has the leverage.
So what you're saying is that in a traditional marriage, the husband has complete control over what the wife can do?
I'd say in a traditional marriage, they stay together. At the bare minimum, it wouldn't be rewarded. The bare minimum is one person isn't paid to leave. And if we're going patriarchal, that would mean the men get the children.
So you're saying that the traditional model should be invoked into law would be what your
Yes.
guys' solution.
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying that it is not traditional. I'm saying in 2024, you can't have a traditional marriage. How we fix the legal system, I would say get rid of child support, alimony, 50-50 custody off the bat.
That's exactly what I would say as well.
Stephen Baskerville says default father custody would fix everything because it's by default patriarchal. And hence, that's what's worked forever.
Yep.
There's a reason why when you remove the father, crap goes crazy.
Absolutely correct.
I agree. I agree. And the stats say that if there is a single parent household, that statistically the children would be better off if the father was the single parent.
I would be fine with that, but it goes back to it's not Make-A-Wish. That's not happening tomorrow. So I can't blame men if in the meantime they choose to walk away. And I don't think that makes them less moral. I don't think you're more moral because you chose to take the risk, or less moral. Make sure you guys sign up on the website if you can, like the video on your way out, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.